My son called me on a Tuesday afternoon, which should have been my first sign that something was wrong. He never called on Tuesdays. He barely called at all anymore. Not since he moved out to Portland with his girlfriend, now fiancée I should say, 3 years back. Most of our communication happened through text messages. I sometimes had to ask my neighbor Helen to help me read because the font on my phone was too small and I kept forgetting how to make it bigger. I'm 67 years old. I've earned the right to have a neighbor who helps me with my phone. But that Tuesday, my son called. And when I picked up, his voice had that particular tightness to it, the same tightness it had when he was 9 years old and had broken the kitchen window with a baseball and was trying to figure out how to tell me before his mother got home. I recognized it immediately. 38 years of knowing a person gives you that. Dad, he said, I need to talk to you about something. I had been sitting on my back porch with a cup of coffee, watching the way the late October light came through the oak trees I planted the year my son was born. This house, my house, the one I've lived in for 31 years, sits on a half-acre lot in Knoxville, Tennessee, and I have spent more hours than I can count on that back porch, watching those trees grow from saplings into something real and permanent. My wife Barbara planted roses along the fence line. She passed 4 years ago, and I've kept watering those roses every single spring, even when I didn't feel like doing much of anything else. Talk to me, I said. What followed was a 20-minute phone call that I have replayed in my mind more times than I'd like to admit. My son, I'll call him by his nickname, the way his mother always did, Danny, explained that he and his fiancée Renata had put an offer on a house. A real house, not the apartment they'd been renting in Portland for the last 2 years. A house with a yard, he said, and good school districts for when they had kids, which they were planning to do soon. He was 38. She was 35. The time was right, he said. They were ready. The house was listed at $480,000. I did not say anything for a moment. That's a beautiful thing, I finally said, because it was. I meant it. I had been waiting for Danny to settle down, to put down roots somewhere, to build the kind of life that looked like something you could hold on to. He'd spent most of his 30s moving from city to city, job to job, not in a reckless way, just in a searching way. I understood it. I had done some searching myself before his mother anchored me to something worth staying for. The problem, Danny said, is the down payment. He explained it carefully, the way he'd always explained things to me, methodically, with details, like he was presenting a case. They had saved $40,000 between the two of them, he said, but the bank wanted 20% down to avoid PMI, and 20% on $490,000 was $96,000. They were short by $56,000. Renata's parents had already offered to contribute $28,000. He was asking if I could match that. $28,000. I sat there on the back porch with my coffee going cold, looking at Barbara's roses, which had finished blooming for the season and gone brown and bare the way they always did in late October. I thought about the savings account I had built up over 30 years of working for the County Public Works Department. Slow, steady, unglamorous work. The kind that didn't make you rich but made you solid. I thought about the $85,000 sitting in that account, the money I thought of as my cushion, my emergency fund, my just in case. $28,000 was a third of it. Let me think about it, I told him. Of course, Dad. Take your time. The offer window closes in 5 days. I thought about it for exactly 2 days. I thought about Barbara, about what she would have said. She would have said, give it to him. She would have said, what are you saving it for, Leonard? You can't take it with you. She was always more generous than me, quicker to open her hands. I was the one who clipped coupons and drove an extra 3 miles to save 12 cents per gallon on gas. She used to tease me about it. I thought about those oak trees and the roses and the way Danny's voice sounded when he said they were planning to have kids. I thought about being the grandfather. I thought about Barbara never getting to be a grandmother, and something in my chest did what it always does when I think about that. Tightened up like a fist closing around nothing. I called Danny back on the third day. "I'll do it," I said. 28,000 to match Renata's parents. The sound he made. I want to be careful here, because I want to be fair to myself and to him both. The sound he made was genuine. It was relief and gratitude and something that sounded like love. He said "Dad" 3 times in a row, just that word, 3 times, like he didn't have anything else. He said he would pay me back, that they would set up a payment plan, that I would be the first person paid back when things stabilized. He said it meant everything to him. I wired the money the following Friday. I want to be clear about something. I am not a suspicious man by nature. I did not wire that money and immediately start wondering if something was wrong. I wired the money and felt good about it, the way you feel good about doing something solid and real for someone you love. I told my neighbor Helen about it when I saw her getting her mail that afternoon, and she said that was a wonderful thing to do, Leonard. You're a good father. I believed that. I went inside and made dinner and watched the news and went to bed feeling like a man who had done right by his family. That was in November. The closing, Danny told me, was scheduled for mid-January. These things take time, he explained. Inspections, appraisals, paperwork, negotiations. I didn't know much about buying a house beyond my own experience, which had happened in 1993 when things worked differently. I trusted him. I asked occasional questions when we talked on the phone, which we did maybe once every 2 weeks, and he gave me updates that sounded reasonable. The inspection went well. The appraisal came in right where they needed it. Things were moving forward. In February, he sent me a photo. Just a photo, no explanation at first. A picture of a house, a craftsman-style bungalow with a covered front porch and a maple tree in the yard. The bare winter branches just starting to show the first faint suggestion of buds. A moment later, a text. "We got the keys yesterday. Home." I looked at that photo for a long time. I texted back, "So proud of you, son. Congratulations." He sent back a heart emoji. I sat with that for a moment, told myself I was being ridiculous for wanting more than a heart emoji, put my phone down, and went back to the book I was reading. March passed. April passed. Danny and I talked on the phone twice, maybe 3 times. He sounded busy and happy. He mentioned things. A new couch they bought, a leak under the kitchen sink they'd fixed, a neighbor who brought them a casserole when they moved in, which he thought was the most old-fashioned and wonderful thing. I listened and asked questions and felt the particular contentment of a parent who knows his child is okay. He did not mention the payment plan he had promised me. I told myself it was too soon to bring it up. $28,000 is not a small amount of money. But Danny was a grown man with a mortgage now, and a good job in software project management. And I was not a man who kept score or held IOUs over his children's heads. My own father had done that, kept a running tally of every favor and every dollar, brought it up at family dinners with the satisfied precision of a man who liked having leverage. I swore I would never be that man. I was not going to be that man. In May, I had a scare with my heart. Nothing catastrophic. Chest tightness that turned out to be a minor arrhythmia, the kind my doctor described as something to monitor, not something to panic over, but the kind that requires follow-up appointments and a small adjustment to my blood pressure medication and, more than anything, a reminder that I am 67 years old and living alone, and the cushion in my savings account is not just a number. It is what stands between me and a situation where I am a burden on the people I love. I mentioned the heart thing to Danny on the phone, briefly, calmly, the way I'd mentioned it to everyone. I didn't want to alarm him, just keep him informed. He said he was sorry to hear that and asked if I was taking it seriously, and I said yes. He said good. The conversation moved on to other things. He did not come to visit. I told myself Portland was a long way from Knoxville. Flights were expensive. He had a new house and a demanding job and a life that was full. I had raised him to be independent. Independent people do not drop everything every time a parent has a minor health scare. I was fine. There was nothing to come visit for. In June, Renata's mother called me. This was unexpected. I had met Renata's parents once, briefly, at a dinner Danny had arranged the previous Thanksgiving in Portland. A dinner I had flown out for, paying for my own ticket, which I mention not as a complaint, but as a detail. Her parents were perfectly pleasant people, Gil and Donna, retired school teachers from Boise. We had eaten turkey and made polite conversation about the drive from the airport, and the weather, and whether the Seahawks were going to have a good season. Donna called me on a Thursday morning in June, and the first thing she said after hello was, "Leonard, I want to make sure I'm not overstepping." "You're not," I said, though I had no idea yet. She told me she had been thinking for a few weeks about whether to call. She said she hoped I understood she wasn't calling to cause trouble. She said she and Gil had been to visit Danny and Renata in April, had stayed for a long weekend, seen the new house, celebrated with them. She said it was a lovely house and they seemed very happy. Then she paused. "At some point during the weekend," she said carefully, "Renata mentioned that you hadn't been out to see the house yet." "That's right," I said. "We haven't found a good time." Another pause. "Leonard," Donna said, "I want you to know that when Gil and I gave Renata that money, our contribution, we did it because we wanted to be part of helping them start their life together. We understood it was a gift. No payback expected, no strings." I waited. "I assumed yours was the same," she said. "But Renata mentioned something a few weeks ago that made me wonder. She mentioned that Danny had said you were, her word was expecting to be paid back. And I wanted to make sure everyone was on the same page, because it seemed like there might be some confusion about what the arrangement actually was." I sat down. I don't remember deciding to sit down. I was suddenly sitting. "I appreciate you calling," I said. We talked for another 10 minutes. Donna was gracious and careful, and I could tell she was a good woman trying to do a right thing in an awkward situation. When we hung up, I sat in my kitchen for a long time, looking at the window above the sink that faces the backyard, looking at the oak trees and the bare rose canes that I hadn't gotten around to pruning yet that season. I thought about the way Danny had said he would pay me back, the specificity of it. Payment plan, first to be paid back when things stabilized. I thought about the fact that 8 months had passed and he had never once mentioned it. I thought about the heart scare in May, the follow-up appointment I had coming up, the $57,000 left in my savings account. I thought about the photo of the house, the craftsman bungalow with the maple tree, that he had sent me with no context, just home, a heart emoji, and silence. I called Danny that evening. He answered on the second ring, cheerful, sounding like a man who has no idea anything is different. We talked for a few minutes about nothing, how I was feeling, whether I'd watched the game last weekend. Then I asked, as naturally as I could manage, how things were going with the house. He said great, they'd finally finished painting the second bedroom. They were thinking about redoing the bathroom at some point, but not rushing it. "I talked to Donna today," I said. A beat of silence. "Oh yeah," he said. His voice shifted. Not dramatically, but I had 38 years of practice listening to this man. "What did she want?" "She called to check in," I said. "We had a nice conversation. She mentioned something that confused me a little." I heard him exhale slowly. "Danny," I said, "when you told Renata about the money I gave you, what did you tell her it was?" The silence that followed was long enough that I counted it without meaning to. 4 seconds. 5. "I told her it was a gift, Dad." Something happened in my chest right then that was not the arrhythmia. It was something older and duller than that. It was the particular feeling of realizing that a story you have been telling yourself does not match the story that is actually true. "You told me you would pay me back," I said. "You told me you would set up a payment plan. You said I would be the first one paid back." "I know what I said." His voice was careful now, and I meant it at the time. "But Dad, do you know what a mortgage is? Do you know what we're paying every month? We've got property taxes, we've got insurance, we've got... Renata's student loans didn't go away just because we bought a house. I was trying to be optimistic when I said that. I thought things would be easier by now." "You thought things would be easier," I repeated. "Dad." And now there was a tone creeping in that I recognized too, the tone of a grown child who has decided that the parent asking for something reasonable is actually the one being unreasonable. I'm not saying never, I'm saying not right now. Is that really? Are you in some kind of financial trouble? Because if this is about the heart thing, this isn't about the heart thing, then what is it about? Because I feel like you're making this into something bigger than it is. I want to be honest about what happened inside me in that moment. There was anger, yes, but underneath the anger was something sadder. It was the image of myself 2 days before I wired that money, sitting on the back porch looking at Barbara's roses, telling myself she would have said to give it to him, thinking about being a grandfather, thinking about those oak trees. I had not been conned by a stranger. I had been made a fool of by hope. I gave you $28,000, I said. You told me it was a loan. You made a plan to repay it. You told your wife it was a gift. Those are 3 different things, and I'm the only one of us who didn't know that. Dad, I'm not finished. I had a cardiac event in May. I'm 67 years old. I live alone. That money is not just money to me. It is what I have if something goes wrong. And you knew that when you asked for it. The silence on his end was different now. Smaller somehow. I'm sorry, he said. And I believe he was. I believe it was genuine, and I believe it was also insufficient, the way apologies often are when they are offered without any accompanying plan to make the thing right. We ended the call without resolution. He said he needed to talk to Renata. I said that was fine. Take his time. We hung up and I sat there in my kitchen as the light outside went from gold to grey to dark. He did not call back that week. He called 2 weeks later. He called on a Sunday morning, and his voice had the careful quality of someone who had prepared what they were going to say. He said that he and Renata had talked it over. He said they understood my perspective. He said they wanted to do the right thing, but given their current financial situation, committing to a fixed repayment schedule wasn't realistic. What they could do, he said, was keep it in mind as a priority and revisit the conversation later in the year when things settled down. Revisit the conversation, I said. Yes. When things settle down. Yes. I asked him a question then that I had been turning over for 2 weeks. I asked him whether, if the situation were reversed, if he had loaned me money and I had told Renata it was a gift and then told him we'd revisit it when things settled down, whether he would consider that acceptable. A long pause. That's not a fair comparison, he said. Why not? Because you're my father. It's different. I thought about my own father, about the running tally, about the leverage. I had sworn I would never be that man. But I was starting to understand that the opposite error existed too. Becoming the man who gives and calls it love, and teaches his children that his resources have no flaw, and his patience has no limit, and his needs are always the last consideration. Danny, I said, I love you. I will always love you, but I want you to understand something. The money I gave you was 1/3 of my savings. I made that decision based on what you told me, that it was a loan, that you would pay me back, that you would be responsible about it. If you had told me it was a gift, I might have made a different decision. I deserved to make an informed decision. You took that from me. He didn't say anything. I'm not going to chase you for the money, I said. I'm not going to make this ugly. But I want you to know that things between us are going to be different. Not because I'm punishing you. Because I'm done making decisions about what I give based on what I think you need instead of what I can actually afford. I heard him swallow. What does that mean practically? He asked. It means that when Renata calls to tell me you're expecting a baby, and I hope she does, I hope that happens for you both, I won't be sending money for the nursery. It means if something breaks in the house, that's what home warranties are for. It means I'll be there for the things that matter, the things that require my presence, not my bank account. Dad, I'm not angry, I said. And I meant it, mostly. I'm just clear. We said goodbye. We have talked 3 or 4 times since then, and the conversations have the careful quality of two people who love each other and have also hurt each other and are still figuring out what the shape of things is supposed to be now. Danny sent me a birthday card in August, handwritten, which he has not done in at least 10 years. It was a good card. He said things in it that were true and that cost him something to say. I put it on the mantel next to Barbara's photograph. I am not a man who gives up on his family. I never will be, but I am also, finally, a man who understands that love and money are not the same thing, and that confusing the two is a lesson that goes in both directions. I taught my son to reach for what he needed. I forgot to teach him, or maybe forgot to teach myself, that the hands he was reaching toward belonged to a real person with a real life and a savings account and an arrhythmia and a back porch with oak trees that need someone to sit under them once in a while. This past October, Danny and Renata flew out to Knoxville. They stayed 4 days. He helped me finally prune Barbara's roses, the ones along the fence line, the ones I'd been putting off for 2 seasons. We didn't talk about the money. Not directly. We didn't need to. Some things exist between people in a different register than words. On the last morning before they left for the airport, Danny stood in the backyard looking at the oak trees. He was quiet for a long moment. "You planted these the year I was born," he said. "I did. They're big now." 38 years, I said. "Things get big if you tend them right." He looked at me, and in his face I saw something I hadn't seen in a long time. The 9-year-old who broke the kitchen window and had to decide whether to tell the truth. He had told the truth then too, eventually. It had cost him. It had also been the right thing. "I'm going to pay you back," he said. "I want you to know that. Not on some vague timeline. I'm going to set something up this month." "Okay," I said. "I should have done it the right way from the beginning." "Yeah," I said. "You should have." We stood there another minute, the both of us, under those 38-year-old trees in the October light. The roses were going bare again for the season. The coffee was getting cold on the porch railing behind me. Sometimes the most important conversations are the ones where neither person says everything they mean, and both people understand exactly what was said. That was one of those. I have been thinking a lot lately about the difference between what we teach our children on purpose and what we teach them by accident. I taught Danny to work hard. I taught him to be curious, to read, to show up on time, to call his mother on her birthday without being reminded. I taught him those things deliberately, consciously, the way you plant something in good soil and tend it, and those things took root. He is a good man in most of the ways that matter. I believe that down to my bones. But I also taught him something I never meant to. I taught him, over 38 years of quiet, consistent generosity, that my resources were bottomless and my needs were negotiable. Not with words, with actions. Every time I covered a shortfall without being asked. Every time I said don't worry about it when he offered to pay me back for something small. Every time I chose his comfort over my own clarity. I was teaching him a lesson I didn't know I was giving. That's the part that stays with me, not the $28,000, though that money is real and its absence in my savings account is real, and my 67-year-old heart that needs monitoring is real. What stays with me is the recognition that cause and effect in a family don't always look like cause and effect. They look like love. They look like a father who just wants his son to have a good life. And then one day you're sitting in your kitchen after a phone call looking at the window above the sink and you realize the thing you were calling love had a shadow side you never examined. I don't say this to make myself the villain of my own story. I say it because I think it's true, and I have gotten to an age where I would rather say the true thing than the comfortable thing. What Danny did, framing that money as a gift to his wife while telling me it was a loan, was a dishonest thing. It was a small betrayal. Not a catastrophic one, but a betrayal nonetheless. He made a decision that served him and cost me, and he made it without my knowledge or consent. That is the kind of thing that, left unexamined, grows. I have seen it grow in other families. I did not want it to grow in mine, so I said what I said, not in anger, not to punish, but because I had finally understood something I should have understood a decade earlier, that the clearest thing I could do for my son at this point in both our lives was to be honest about what I needed and what I would no longer quietly absorb. That is not a withdrawal of love. That is, if anything, the most honest expression of it I have managed. The housewarming happened without me. I won't pretend that didn't hurt, but I have sat under those oak trees for 38 years and I know something about what it takes to tend something into permanence. It requires honesty about what the roots need. It requires being willing to prune the parts that are growing wrong, even when it's uncomfortable, even when you'd rather just let it go for another season. Danny and I are finding our way back to each other. It is slower and more careful than before, and I think that slowness is actually the right pace for two people who are being more honest with each other than they have been in a long time. He sent me a handwritten birthday card. He came to Knoxville and pruned Barbara's roses with his own hands. That's not nothing. That's actually quite a lot. I am not a man who gives up on his family, but I am finally a man who tells the truth about what giving costs and trusts that the people who love me can handle hearing it.